The book marketing fundamentals are message, audience, and hook. Every author has to decide what those three things are. It doesn't matter if you're a traditionally published author or if you're a self-published author, you have to identify those three things. The payoff to identifying and taking the time to identify those three things are that you will be able to use the information that you're gleaning from these three things in every other area of your book marketing.
Welcome everybody. And today we have a really special guest with us. I have Claudine Wolk. She and I met through a mutual friend, and we were able to incorporate a presentation from her in our Authorpreneur Summit, which just was an awesome opportunity and to really talk about marketing. And she is an author, she is a marketing professional, she is a podcaster, a woman of many talents, and she is here today to talk about marketing, to help us to jump into marketing activities, and also her book, Help Your Book Be Seen and Sold. Is that right? Is that the right name?
Get your book seen and sold.
Seen and sold. So I'm absolutely loving it. I started reviewing it once you sent it over to me. Thank you for doing that. So give us a little bit of information, Claudine, about your background and some of the things you're going to be talking with us about today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, April. I'm so excited. And by the way, I am going to take that course. I kind of thought the $49 Amazon ad course was going to be available to the $49 people after the 12 weeks were over. So that's kind of when I was planning on purchasing that. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, April and I had a mutual friend who used April services in order to publish her book. And she raved about April. And I am a podcaster, and I'm trying to share as many real life experiences of people in the publishing industry, people who want to self-publish and those who help them, people who want to traditionally publish and those who help them together. When Cheryl said that April was fantastic, I thought, okay, I got to get in touch with her. And we ended up doing a podcast and really hitting it off because she's so helpful to authors. But I've been where you are. I self-published my first book in 2008, and that book ended up becoming purchased by a traditional publisher. So then I went through the experience of traditionally publishing that book as well. And then over the years, I got into some broadcasting and radio and started to interview authors for this local radio station. And I met so many authors who said, how did you publish? How did you market? Or my book's already published and I don't know how to market it. Can you help me? And I decided to put this second book out called Get Your Book Seen and Sold, because what I was finding with authors was that they didn't know the breadth of what was possible in book marketing before they started down the publishing route. And then by the time they got there, they had missed out on some things that they really could have taken advantage of. And there are so many books and resources out there on self-publishing and publishing and even book marketing and promotion. But those books are, this thick. And I thought, if I can get everything comprehensively out there in a book that's this thick, maybe I won't scare authors away and they'll embrace book marketing and have it be fun and joyful and exciting and really get into it. So that's the purpose in writing Get Your Book Seen and Sold. And I do a podcast now called Get Your Book Seen and Sold. See how I'm branding? And I can use that. I use that and I interview folks like experts like April. And I also interview authors and I interview people who offer different things for authors. So that's what I'm doing now. But tonight, is it okay if I jump in, April?
Yeah. Please do.
Okay. So April said that I could chat about book marketing fundamentals. And that was kind of a big piece of the idea of writing the book, because everybody needs a place to start, right? And when you start to think about book marketing, there's just it's a whole new discipline. There's so many things that you can do in order to market your book that it's hard to take that first step. So in my opinion, the first step is for every author to identify 3 things. So the book marketing fundamentals are message, audience, and hook. Every author has to decide what those 3 things are. It doesn't matter if you're a traditionally published author or if you're a self-published author, you have to identify those 3 things. The payoff to identifying and taking the time to identify those 3 things are that you will be able to use the information that you're gleaning from these 3 things in every other area of your book marketing. So I promise you, if you do some of the work that we'll talk about tonight, that you will use this information in every other part of your book marketing from here till the end. You can add to it and you can decide some things are more important than others or some things are more relevant than other things. But for the most part, yes, it's going to pervade every aspect of what you're doing for your book. But it can be fun. And that's kind of where I'm hoping that I get to the point where you're like, it's not drudgery, that it's actually fun. So part of it being fun is hopefully showing you some of these things and how you can get there, and then how you can use them once you get there. Message and audience they're 2 things that really kind of go together. So they're going to overlap a little bit, but let's start with message, because message is the most fun. Okay. Message. What's message? Message is, what do you want the reader to come away with after reading your book? And it's not just nonfiction, it's fiction too, because fiction also has themes, messages, things you're trying to teach, or ways that you're trying to entertain. Okay. So when you're thinking about message for either of your books, that's kind of where you want your head to go. And to help you to identify all the different possible messages, I came up with this fun exercise, and it's called the brain dump. And I do not take credit for this. I had a friend who was in marketing. And when I wrote my first book, which I'm just going to show you the cover, it's called It Gets Easier and Other Lies We Tell New Mothers. When I wrote the first book, I had to work toward identifying my message and audience. And I worked with a gal who, like I said, is a friend of mine, and she was a marketer, and she would use this in her corporate consulting. So what you see here is basically it's just a blank piece of paper, and it's your brain dump. And this is in my book, the Get Your Book Seen and Sold book. And what's so fun is that I've had readers who will send me pictures of this page in their book, and they'll share with me everything that they came up with. But as an example, what I came up with that first book, It Gets Easier and Other Lies We Tell New Mothers, this was what my brain dump looked like. So there were so many things that I was trying to say. And again, I just want to reiterate that I know where you're at. I so desperately wanted this first book to come out because becoming a mother really scrambled my eggs. I mean, I thought it was going to be easy. I thought it was going to be something that, I was just going to take a break for a little while and do this and then get back to forget it, So I learned right away, and it was so hard. So what did I do? Personally, I guess you guys can tell already, I'm not very shy. So I started to ask questions of every mother that I'd ever met, my own mother, my mother-in-law, friends. I had to move across country to California during that time. I was asking moms in California, moms back on the East Coast, how did you do this? What helped? What worked? I wanted to try everything. And the other thing that I was finding was that there weren't a lot of moms who were honest about how hard motherhood was. It was almost as if we talked about how hard motherhood was, we didn't want to be moms anymore, or we weren't good moms. And that got me, because I thought, that's not right either. We should be able to be honest about this. So you can see some of the things that I was thinking of, when I was trying to get this book out there, what my messages were. But you can also kind of see how writing all these messages down kind of opens up where you could possibly market the book. So that's the reason why you're starting with messages. What messages are in your book? Because eventually those messages are going to lead you to where you want to market the book or where you could possibly market the book. Okay, so that's message. But there's some other ways that you can identify messages too. And some of the other ways that you can do it, you can chit chat with a friend. You could talk it out. You can say, okay, here's what I'm trying to get across, but I'm not 100% sure this is it. And you can have somebody ask you questions, feed you questions to kind of narrow it down to what your overarching themes are in your book. What are your overarching messages? Because if I sat down with someone and they said, well, what's your book about? I mean, I couldn't say these things, all of them. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. What you're trying to do is you're getting it all out of your head in the brain dump. And then you're saying, okay, let me get this down to what I'm really trying to say. What are my overarching messages? What are the most important messages? Another way that you can find some of the messages are you can go to the library or better yet, a bookstore and go to the shelf where you feel that your book is going to sit in your mind and take a look at some of those books on the shelves and take a look at the back cover and see what themes are popping out at you. You don't even need to go to the bookstore. You could go to Amazon and you could just start searching the categories on the left-hand side of Amazon of books, of genres. And you can take a look at the books and you can see, like, are there messages that are popping out at you that are related to your book? I have another little thing I want to show you for message. There's another little exercise in the book, just to give you an idea of the detail that we're talking about here. You could just ask yourself and write down some of these, answers to these questions. Does your book solve a problem? Why is your book important to share with people? What are you hoping that a reader comes away with after reading your book? Why is sharing your message so important to you in the world? And why are you uniquely qualified to share the information in your book? And again, in the end, after asking these questions, these prompts, what you're trying to do is you're trying to come away with the three most important messages that you want to come away with. So for my first book, It Gets Easier in Other Lives We Tell New Mothers, what I came away with was a fun, practical guide to help the new mom. So fun, practical, humor, honesty. Those were the four things that I came away with. So before we go on with message, I just want to go back to audience, because like I said, they kind of work together. So with the audience that you're trying to identify, somebody say, well, who's your book written for? And a lot of authors will say, oh, it's for everybody. Okay, now, you need to identify specifically, who do you picture going to the bookstore and pulling your book off the shelf? Who specifically do you see doing that? And as an example, with my first book, it was, okay, I thought pregnant moms first. At first, I thought pregnant moms. And then I thought, well, geez, I talked it out with a friend of mine. Do pregnant moms really want to be told how hard motherhood is? Nope. Nor would they listen, right? Pregnant moms aren't listening to that. No, they just want to be like I was, and they want to pretend that, yeah, it's going to be easy. It's not going to be a problem. So definitely mothers, that was important. And then what we came away with was it really is the new mom. It's the mom who's just had a baby, who's thinking, okay, now I know this is hard. Now I need help. So new mom. So with audience and trying to identify your specific audience, here are some questions that might prompt you to determine who that reader is, who that specific reader is. Does your reader work outside the home? Does your reader homeschool, for example? Does your reader shop? Where does your reader shop? Where does your reader, in your imagination, where do they go to get their books? How do they dress? Where do they eat? Now, why would you say, okay, where do they eat? Why is this important? Because it might present a marketing opportunity for you to know exactly where they eat and what they eat. It's just crazy how this works. But the more you can tell us about your reader, the more opportunities you're going to have to identify a book marketing possibility. So now you have, let's say you have your message and you have your audience. Now, what's a hook? A hook is something that makes your book unique. It's something that distinguishes your book from every other book out there. Because that's another thing that you come to learn, right, April, as an author, that is there anything new under the sun, really? I mean, there's so many things out there that are alike, but you have to figure out why your book is different, how it's different, and it could be just because of you, because you're different or you're coming at it from a new angle. I like to give the example of Oprah Winfrey. Her producers did an interview once, and they said, well, tell us what's a good pitch for a show when someone comes to you for a show. And the producer said, well, we once had somebody who came to us and said, I have a ghost in my house. I would make a great guest because I have a ghost. And they were like, well, that's okay. And then she turned around and said, well, I'm in love with my ghost and I want to marry my ghost. Well, okay, now you have a hook. Now you have something that's different, that's unique, that's distinguished, that's going to get, people interested, something a little bit different. So you want to identify what that is for your book. Does it have a twist to it? A lot of books sometimes will have two different narrators going at the same time, and something exciting happens. They have that inciting incident that's really great, and then they'll turn around and have another inciting incident. So there's like two hooks. I forget what the name of that book was. It was Katie Gutierrez, and I forget what the name of her. Oh, I forget the name of that book, but it was that kind of a thing. It had two different inciting incidents to it that kind of catapulted it above the rest. So in order to identify your hook, these are some of the questions that you want to ask yourself. And I always had, why will the reader care? Because that's a really important thing. Anything that you write is really for the person who's reading it. And you want to make sure that you get to the point where, okay, this is why they're going to care. This is what makes it different. This is what makes it unique. So that is hook. And it takes a little time, but it's really fun when authors will send me everything filled out and they really get down to exactly what's going to, get the hook there and get them excited. So, okay. So once you have the message, the audience, and hook, you have it identified. One thing that you can do, and a really important thing that you can do once you have all three pieces, is you can create what's called an elevator pitch. Well, what's an elevator pitch? An elevator pitch is exactly what it sounds like. An elevator pitch is, let's say you're stuck in the elevator with someone and you have 2 minutes and you're talking to one another and they say, hey, what do? You say, oh, I'm a writer. Well, that's pretty cool. I'm a writer. Oh, well, what do you write? That's going to be the next question. Well, I kind of have a book that I think it's, it's kind of for young adults, but I'm not 100% sure. And, something happens and somebody goes, on a special trip and, well, you've lost the person because already they're like, I don't, what's this book about? And one of the things that's important is that you're book marketing all the time. And it's never too early to start book marketing. So anybody that you talk to, you want that to be your next reader, or you want that person hopefully to tell you that, or to tell somebody else, somebody that would be interested in the book that you've written, you're marketing for you. So you want to have a pithy one-sentence liner ready in order to get that first book sale with the person who you're sitting in the elevator with. So my first book, I came up with, it's a fun, practical guide for the new mom. So everything that we talked about in the brain dump, and we came up with new moms. I actually have the audience in there. So fun, practical guide for the new mom. How many words is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 words. Okay. For the second book, it was a pithy guide for new authors to publish and promote their book. So that's a few more words, but you get the gist there. Powerful words, pithy. It's a guide. New authors. So I've got my audience in there to do what? To publish and promote their book. So those are the things that you want to come away with in doing the exercises for message, audience, and hook. So we've talked about how to identify and some of the exercises that you can do to try to identify these three things. But I want to give you an example of how you can use them. So with the message, just to give you an example, one of the things that I said in my brain dump, one of the things I had that was really important to me was that I realized a judgment in motherhood down here. Moms, gosh, so desperately want to be good moms. So how can I use that message in order to get book marketing? Well, one of the things that you can do is you can find radio shows that specifically cater to moms. And back in the day, there was a woman named Dr. Laura Schlesinger. And Dr. Laura catered to women who wanted to be good moms and good wives. And so I thought it would be fun to send her a copy of It Gets Easier in Other Lies We Tell New Mothers. I sent it to her producer. I literally mailed it to her producer. And she loved the book. And they were having promotion every Monday. They would announce a book, a different book, and they would give away the book to callers who called in. Well, they picked my book, and on this particular day, I had to give 30 copies of the book. It was a nationally syndicated radio show reaching millions. And that day, It Gets Easier went to #1 in motherhood on Amazon. And that was the marketing effort that got me the book deal to have the self-published book go to a traditionally published book, because I proved I could sell the book. And that's all because I identified a message from the book and connected that message with a specific book marketing idea. And I know, you're probably down the road where you're thinking of publicists and you know how expensive those things are. And I just want to encourage you that a lot of the ideas, some of the best marketing ideas, some of the best book marketing ideas that lead to sales come from you, because you know your book better than anybody else. And now, because you've done these exercises, you're going to know exactly who you're targeting, your first level. For me, it was new moms. And then maybe it was moms, and then maybe it was grandmoms. There's other layers, but first focus on the new mom, that your top tier audience. I'm going to give you another example. So of course, most of what I did here was about moms. So one of the media that's out there that really focuses on new moms are magazines. You guys can imagine Parenting Magazine, Parenthood, Mom and Baby, everything that you would see in a pediatrician's office. So I also sent the media kit items, a press release and a story idea to magazines. What you're trying to do there is, when you're pitching to magazines, you're asking them to not just do one thing, maybe, but you're saying, hey, listen, would you do a review of the book, or would you do a story that has to do with the book, or would you just mention the book in your magazine? So you could ask for 3 different things. And in this case, when I sent it to Mom and Baby magazine, they just did a mention of the book. So they said, okay, the book is out and here's what it is and here's what it does. So that's great. A local paper who I sent a pitch to, she thought, one of the local reporters thought it would be great for lifestyle. So she did a whole article about how, I still have it here, it gets better but not easier, she wrote. And then she talked about honesty in motherhood and how hard it is to talk about, and how important it is that women keep a sense of self. So I can show you that. So that's something else that you can do. So now I'm using that message that moms really need to take care of themselves And then if they take care of themselves, then they can also take care of the baby. So that was another message I pulled. And that is another place where we used it. Women need practical advice that works. That was another one, practical advice. So they had all these mom expos, and I think they still do. They're kind of like trade shows for moms where they promote all different kinds of baby products and baby goods and things that were helpful for moms. And I pitched that I could come and speak. That's another thing that you can do. So I went and I spoke and I did, a presentation, and then they let me do a book signing. So that was another way, because practical help was what they were after, those folks. Women don't want to feel judged and compared to other moms. So I would pitch podcasts who were catering to moms. So anyway, you get the idea. Those are the different kinds of things that you can do once you have all of your messages. Going through the exercises and kind of answering the questions, I think that kind of helps get your juices flowing. And I think talking out with a friend, somebody who also enjoys the subject that you're talking about. Like if you were writing a young adult novel, I would try to talk to a friend who is into young adult novels and say, hey, listen, I'm trying to pull messages from my book, and I'm trying to get an idea of where I should promote this. What do you think? Get her idea, get her his idea. Another really great way is, I think Amazon is a great place to go. Finding out your competing titles for whatever book it is that you're going to write, that's kind of where you want to go on Amazon and take a look at the book and take a look at, as you scroll down, you'll see the other books too. And I know it sounds like it takes a lot of time, but it's going to give you an idea of all the other things that are out there. You can run a survey. That's something that I did out in when I was in California. I sent an email to all my friends, and people love to just give their opinion, and to send out maybe an email to a group of friends and say, hey, listen, could you just answer a few of these questions for me? I'm trying to get a sense for what people are interested in. On the mom book, I would write, just one question. Could you answer this question for me? What was the hardest thing that you found with motherhood? And then I got a lot of feedback that way. There's one, it's a free software. If you're into this, it's called Tally So. Have you heard of this, April?
No.
TALLY.SO. And it's a way for you to create a survey. You can even add, what I did with the second book was I had the PDF format of the second book. And it was a way for me to get blurbs and testimonials. I sent an email that had the link to the PDF, and it also had a way to have the person just fill in the blanks on my survey, their name and exactly what they loved about the book. And then the software actually collected that information right online. So you can use that as a survey too. You don't have to use it for book reviews, but you could. The other thing too is and I hate to say it, but it's just the Google searches. A lot of times I'll do that. If I'm trying to get on different podcasts. So I'll simply type in podcasts that cater to women over 50. And then I'll see what they're about. Because I feel like everybody wants to write a book, it seems, and it's a popular subject and people have a lot of questions. So why not pitch that side of the book to podcasters? But yeah, just throwing in a few keywords in Google search can give you a really good idea of where folks are. Tell you what, when I had that conversation with my friend who came up with the brain dump, I'll never forget it. We were on the phone. She's like, you get, it's not pregnant moms. It's not pregnant moms. They're having this argument on who we're trying to reach, who we're trying to target. And it was great to talk it through and come up with, it's new moms, because then you know where to focus your energy, in the whole universe of things that you can do and folks that you can, try to market to. It's a, relief. Okay, new moms. All right, I'll just focus on where new moms are. I ended up speaking to moms clubs at local churches. I mean, who knew, it really, when you can focus on one particular audience, everything opens up to you, because you can't do everything in terms of book marketing. You can't do everything. So the next step from this in identifying message, audience, and hook is to then kind of decide where you're going to go from there with all the other marketing things you can do. And a lot of that depends on what your publishing timeline is and what your goals are. And goals are really important. Is this a book that you want on every shelf in the country and on Amazon and on every outlet? Or do you want it to just be on Amazon? You really have to take the time to decide that first. And then you can move on to maybe creating a marketing plan. And what do you want to have on the marketing plan? Do you want to do pre-reviews, or do you want to skip that part? Do you want to do interviews? A big part of deciding what you want to do is, what are the things you like to do? Do you like social media? Do you not like social media? Are you a good writer? Do you want to write for magazines? There are a lot of industry magazines. I don't know if you're writing a fiction book or a nonfiction book, but there are a lot of industry magazines that would love to have articles from authors who are experts in certain areas. Do you want to do speaking gigs? Do you want to do, I met a girl, I did an interview on my Substack with a gal who wrote a dystopian fantasy YA. She goes to those Comic-Con trade shows. Like, who knew that would be the perfect event for a YA fantasy author? And that's where she found her audience. And that's another thing too. It really is a mystery. It's like a puzzle. You got to keep trying different things and figuring, to figure out exactly what's the best direction to go in, or where you're really finding your audience. And with that first book, It Gets Easier in Other Lives We Tell New Mothers, it ended up being like the perfect baby shower gift, because it gets a big laugh at every baby shower when, people open it and they read the title. That's not something that I had originally thought of, in the beginning, but obviously embraced it later. Ads can be expensive, but I think if it's your target audience and you feel like, yeah, this is exactly who I want to reach, it can be absolutely worthwhile. Most magazines, if you look on their website, they have what's called a publishing calendar, and they also have media kit. So if you go on a particular magazine's website, you want to type in the search bar media kit, and it'll show you exactly how much it'll cost to advertise in that magazine. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. When I pitched this Get Your Book Seen and Sold, I did a blog tour with Women on Writing, and they provided me with 15 different bloggers who wanted to review the book and promoted it that way. And it was like $300, and that was worthwhile. That really paid off. I did a cluster of things launch week, like what April's talking about, Amazon ads, which obviously I want to learn more about too. Amazon ads, Facebook ads. So I had a certain amount of money that I was willing to spend, and I clustered a lot of things in that week. And I did get that #1 ranking on Get Your Book Seen and Sold, which was on Amazon, which was pretty great. Because once you get that #1 ranking, then you can always say you're a #1 best-selling book on Amazon. Right, April?
Yep, that's right.
So I don't want to give you guys a headache, but I told April that I have a must-do book marketing one sheet that has everything on one sheet. I mean, you can really pick and choose what you want to do, but if you wanted to get an overall view of all the things that you possibly could do, so you know what you're getting into, I could certainly provide that to you guys. It's in the book too, but it's a PDF. I can remember going to the grocery store with the first book. I mean, you know how many mom magazines are out there? And I'd go to the grocery store and I'd see them all laying on oh my gosh, did I have a headache? Like, I could do this and I could do this and I could do this and I could do this. And it's like, you just can't do everything. So you throw a few things to the wall and you see what sticks. But the other thing I would say, I mean, I really didn't intend on doing a detailed book marketing. I just wanted to get you guys the introduction. But yeah, like I said, there's so many things that you can do focus on what you enjoy doing. Focus on that connection, like the connection between what you like to do and what you kind of naturally are doing anyway when it comes to social media and what makes sense for where your audience is. And the other thing too is shake your tree. I call it shake your tree. Think about the people in your lives. And I don't mean the people who you want to buy a book. It's more, what connections do they have that could be useful? I worked with a gal consulting, and she had a friend whose husband was a television producer. And I'm like, hello. Sometimes you're just not thinking of those folks closest to you, but it isn't to buy the book, because you want long term success with your book sales. But yeah, like I said, focus on the things that you really enjoy doing, and then it's going to seem more joyful and more fun, and putting the puzzle pieces together is going to be a lot more fun. But it's a tough, especially when you don't have anybody in your life who really understands what you're going through, writing and marketing.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you continue on for a year, for 6 months? What is the scope of that look like?
Forever. I mean, it's never going to be, in my opinion, it's not going to be as crazy as it is pre-launch, launch, right after launch. Those are the crazy times. And then I would say for a year, you're kind of sticking with it, you're hanging in there. But I've had authors whose books have gone, crazy sale years later, depending on what's going on in the world, and that's another thing you want to keep attuned to current events, because if your book somehow relates to a current event and can be helpful, that's another story pitch. So yeah, so I would say those pre-launch, after launch, those are the craziest times. But this book, it gets easier. The one that I published in 2009. I just did the audio version of that book last year in 2020.
The best way to sell this book that you've got now is to create another book.
Right.
And the best way to sell them both is to create another book, because they will cross promote each other and you get more brand awareness. And so you're focusing attention on the new books, and maybe even like book one ends up being a freebie that just is a lost leader that just helps bring people to your other books in the series. So there's lots of different opportunities, but single books to sell, that's the hardest, is that uphill battle there. Once you get to 3, 4, 5, it's so much easier, especially when they're all in the same genre or in the same series.
Yep. And I would say taking and listening to all the free stuff that April provides, learn as much as you can. There's no substitute for the way things are being promoted right now. And you can't get away from the fact that Amazon is the biggest bookseller in the world. Most people buy books from Amazon. Most people search for books from Amazon, and there's just really no way around it. We just did an interview, right, April? And the question I asked her, because I knew my audience was going to want to hear it, was, can I not do this? Can I just skip it? I don't want to do Amazon ads. It's exhausting. It's you really got to watch. You gotta monitor. There's money involved. And she's like, well, if you want to sell books, you have to do it. Well, okay. So in terms of a book marketing plan that you guys are, you're deciding where to put your energy, Amazon ads has got to be on there. I would do Amazon ads before I do an ad in a magazine. I mean, unless your target audience was super, super specific.
And it's so funny. I like going back to what you said, Claudine, about do what you love. I have one author that I interviewed who has 90% of his sales are from school visits. He loves them. And he does very little on Amazon. Bobby Hinman does a ton of sales on events. Like, she loves going to events and doing things like that. So there's a lot. I mean, when you really love something, you're much more likely to be successful with it. And yes, they could add Amazon ads to the mix, and that would be additional. But if you don't have enough energy to separate yourself into all of these different places, I love the idea of just figuring out what you love and doing more of that. And if that doesn't include Amazon ads, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think the best thing to do is to read, you don't have to read my book, but read a book like mine that's not going to give you a headache, that's going to give you the overall breadth of what you can do in book marketing, and then pick and choose. Because that was really my goal. I got so frustrated listening to authors who were spending their money hither and yon, and then getting to the point where they were like, oh gosh, I wish I had just known that this existed and I would have just spent the money there. So that was the idea behind that. So if you can wrap your arms around all the things that are possible for you to do and pick and choose, you'll feel a lot more settled in the work that you're doing. But sadly, it has to be done. And that's the dirty little secret, I think. And I like to think that writing and marketing have more in common than not. The creativity that you harness to write your book can be used to market your book. It's just a little bit of a different way of looking at it. And find the honest expert resources out there like April, who really are encouraged and for you to do well with your book. I just want to give you one other example. I just did an interview with Mariah Fredericks. She wrote historical fiction novelist. She just wrote, The Wharton Plot just came out, but she also wrote The Lindbergh Nanny. Wow, what a gal. But anyway, her thing, I asked her about a writing process, and she said, I write all morning and I market all afternoon. She didn't say she marketed every afternoon, but she said she marketed in the afternoon. And that just goes to show you there's a very successful author who's sold millions of books, and she's still at it, and that's what she does. But what does she do? She's comfortable at home, so she does podcast interviews. Just like we're, looking at each other on Zoom video, that's what she does. So, one other little trick. If you guys are familiar with podcasts, because one of the other thing I'm reading lately is that radio and podcasts sell books. I shared my own experience with Dr. Laura's radio program, but there are still a lot of radio programs out there. Obviously, you can pitch to them. But podcasts, when you go online, on your phone, and you hit your podcast button, there's a search bar in that podcast button. So if you've written a book about a certain topic, you can search on that topic and find podcasts that way. And then you can look at all the different episodes in the podcasts to see what people are talking about, to see what people are interested in. We're kind of back to message and audience. But that's another way to kind of focus your time, because if radio and podcasts sell books, then you want to be on radios and podcasts. So just another idea. But again, something that you could focus your time on. I had done book marketing for a long time after my first book came out. And one of the things I really loved was I got an interview. Again, don't forget local radio. I got an interview with a local radio station, and it was KYW in Philadelphia. And I went down to the KYW studios and I did an interview with a podcaster. And I loved it. And I just, there's a microphone. This is really cool. I love this. So then I went back to accounting for a while. And then I was saying to my husband, my youngest daughter left and to go to college. And I said, I'm a little down. And my husband said, what's the matter? And he's like, what would you like to do? I said, well, if I had a chance to do what I really like to do, I would be on the radio. I really like radio. I like broadcasting. And he said, there's a local radio station right up the street. I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, it's right up the street there. So I went into the local radio station and I said, here's what I want to do. And they said, okay, well, we'll get you in. You can be an assistant to someone who has a program, and then we'll get you in there. Well, it turns out she decided that she wanted to leave. And they said, the job's yours if you want it. And at the local radio station, you had to learn how to record. You had to learn how to use the board. When you see all those like pod things, if you ever watch, somebody making an album or a video, so I had to learn how to do all that and how to put the show on. And then I did that for about 4 years, and podcasting started to become really, really popular. And I thought, you know what? I think I want to get out there and do a podcast. So I used all of that knowledge and put it into podcasting. So again, shake your tree. Like, what did I know already? I knew how to record. I knew how to edit. I knew how to, and I like it. I really like it. And so use that and created a podcast called Get Your Book Seen and Sold, which is the same title as my book. So that by the time the book came out, I'd been podcasting for about 8 months, and I was able to say, or at least writing, through Substack. And I had an email audience already, and I was able to say, hey, my book's out, take a look at it. So I already had a nice warm audience waiting for me.
The other question I have, you talked about Substack a couple of times and mentioned that. I know it's a blogging platform, but would you mind just giving us a little bit of an overview, and do you like it? Because there's so many other platforms out there that allow you to do blogs. And for me, like, I have blog features on my website, and I don't know, is there a benefit for using Substack?
I think so. Substack is like, I don't know if you guys have heard of Medium, is another type of writing platform. But years ago, in 2008, when I first started, I was blogging. And you guys know the blog is kind of connected to your website. But you had to have a separate mailing list going on too. So it was blogging, and then you would do the newsletter with your mailing list, and it was a lot of work. So I did that for a long time when I was promoting my first book. And then years later, when I started to think about this book, I said, I think I don't like to do that anymore. I really don't want to blog. It takes a lot of time, and who's really seeing it? I kind of felt. So what happened was Substack came along, and the Substack platform is fabulous because it's geared specifically for writers, and everything is formatted kind of for you. So even if you like to add a lot of bells and whistles, they just don't have them, which is great. Which means you basically open up like a Word document within the platform, and you just write. And what's nice about it is that Substack maintains your mailing list. They call them subscribers. So you can just start writing, which I did, and I called it Get Your Book Seen and Sold, and I just started writing on book marketing topics. And then people search the Substack platform, and if they're interested in book marketing topics, they would find me. And if they want to subscribe, they like what I'm saying, they subscribe with their email. Now I have an email list of subscribers who like to look at my work. One thing that Substack did was they added on the option to have a podcast. So I can write a post just like a blog, or I can also podcast. The podcast goes through the network of Apple Podcasts and everywhere, Spotify podcast, like everywhere you would listen to a podcast, you will find this podcast. But Substack, kind of is the platform. The beautiful thing about Substack is you can make money as a writer because you can decide which posts, if you're writing the post or if it's a podcast, you can decide which of those are for paid subscribers only. You could make them all free, and that's great. You have subscribers and they're all free. Or you can pick and choose different posts that only paid subscribers can see. So the paid subscribers pay, up to, you can decide the cost, but mine, for example, $50 a year. So what's that? Less than $5 a month, and they're getting all of my book marketing knowledge, and for just a little bit of money. But they're supporting me because they like what I write or they like the podcast. So it's a way for writers to make money. You don't have to pay to be on the platform. which is the beauty of it. So what they say is that Substack as a company supports writers. And instead of being a blogger where nobody pays you anything, you have this opportunity to make some money. The fiction writers use it. The nonfiction writers use it. Some fiction writers will use it to serialize their work, or they'll just, put out new material in a new Substack stream. It's pretty great, and there's a community there where I often interview other Substack writers, because through the platform I get to see what they're writing, and I can like what they're writing. You can comment on the different. So I just think it's fabulous. I think it's finally something for the writer. And, we're not talking, some people make a lot of money, but I'm not, we're not talking a lot of money, but it's nice that your work is seen and can be supported. So it takes a little bit of time, but I'm not super techie, and I picked it up pretty quick. The other thing too is they're in, like, they have what's called a dashboard, so I can look at all of my subscribers. So yeah, it really is. Do you own it? I mean, you could download the list. Yeah, essentially you do. You do own it. But what's nice from my standpoint is it's not like, what was the other service, Monkey or Gmail or Constant Contact, where you have to maintain anything. They kind of maintain it for you. And my understanding is that if you had a standing list already, this is what I'm finding, a lot of writers who had newsletters that had a nice long list of email subscribers, they could export or import them into their Substack. So a lot of writers are making that move. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me. Come see me on Substack, guys.
Okay.
All right. Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.